long story short, you made Cultic. Cultic is amazing. You're working on Cultic Chapter 2 right now.
Hmm.
And then you also made a game called Bonerooms, right? And you released that, was that last week?
Yeah, on the 30th of October.
How did that go?
Oh, it wasn't bad considering like it kind of came out of nowhere. It was just like it was kind of like a silly prototype that I put together for last Halloween in a week, and then I thought it was fun enough that I was like, maybe I should flesh this out and give it like an actual Steam release.
Yeah.
And so just like at the beginning of October, I finally opened it back up and started working on it. So it was like maybe just like about a month of really pushing it on social media. But I mean, it launched with like 1,400 wish lists, and
Yeah.
it was a pretty slow launch. So it's like that's kind of to be expected. But I don't know, when you have like I've got when you've sold like nearly 100,000 units of a game that is overwhelmingly positive on Steam, you would expect like, okay, so I've got like a little bit of, maybe like a little bit of a following, like people who would be excited that
Hmm.
I've released something new, and then like 25,000 followers on Twitter, which isn't like an insane amount, but for me, like that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then you tweet that you're like, hey, I'm launching this new game, and it's like $1. And
Yeah.
and it gets like 300 likes in 2 days. Which every time I say this, I don't mean it to be like I made a tweet, it should be viral, but it's like with that kind of following, you would
Yeah.
expect a little more than that from like a launch. So it was just kind of disappointing, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a statement about the quality of the game or about like my community. I think that like social media is just it's so hard to use for game dev right now,
Yeah.
especially Twitter.
Yeah.
The algorithm's just so busted, and it doesn't help that we're that we were like in the literally like the thick of election season too. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
everything's kind of tilted towards election stuff, politics,
Yeah.
ads. So and also launching during a Halloween festival, or during a
Right.
Steam festival when you don't get as much visibility. So I recognize there were a lot of factors working against me. I don't know. I guess I was just hoping for a little more traction on it, because I think the game's fun. But
Yeah.
I do understand that it's not like I put a giant marketing spend behind the game. I didn't do like this giant ad campaign for it. It didn't have like years of time to build up a following. It was just a very quick thing. But that being said, I do recognize that it is a multiplayer game, and building a multiplayer following and trying to market a multiplayer game is a lot different than single
Yeah.
player, because if you don't have a player base, then people who buy the game have nobody to play it with unless they have a bunch of friends they can give the game to. And it also sucked because I was really banking on selling multi-packs of the game, so people could for like $5 they could get like 4, 5, 6 whatever copies of the game. And I didn't realize until like the day before launch that Steam did away with those. You can't do those anymore. And apparently they did it a long time ago, like back when they made.
Interesting. That's so that people play a multiplayer game. You do multi-packs so that you have friends to play with.
Well,
Is that
right.
the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like instead of like having to buy 4 separate games then gift them to people, you used to be able to do multi-packs on Steam. And I
Yeah.
guess around the time that they made refunds like a thing, they got rid of those.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. So I was oh yeah, people just like spend $5, look at 4 copies of the game, and
Yeah.
then they'll be able to play it with their friends. And then they got rid of that, which sucks. I did not realize that.
Right. Right. Well, it's the weirdest feeling, and I know the feeling of having success in the past and just seeing the world embrace your art style and your sensibilities with gameplay. And you get this, like, for me, I'll just speak for me, like with my previous games, I got this huge rush of like pride and probably a little bit of ego. And then when you create something again, you kind of feel like this, it's natural to feel like this sense like, oh, this will work too.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't, it can be really, really like disorienting. Did you feel, were you angry? Did you feel like it was just a fluke, or did you feel like you yourself had failed in some way?
I mean, it's definitely, I wouldn't say I was like angry about it, because like given everything that we know about like the games market right now, you know, like how saturated it is, and knowing how bad of a time October is to release because it's such a busy schedule, like all the way that it went made total sense when you consider all of the factors around it. Like, you know, this is like, if you put it on paper, if you know, if I were to like lay this out, like, hey, I'm gonna start marketing this game and then release it a month later and like show that to, you know, like a marketing team, they'd be like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
So like all, you know, all of the factors made sense as to why this didn't work out, but it is still kind of like, you know, because you see games explode all the time of just like, because, and the thing is like Bonerooms is like, it's like a clip factory. Like it's such a goofy, like crazy game that it's, you know, every time we had a playtesting session for it, we always came away with all of these hilarious clips. And, you know, in my mind, I was like, yeah, you know, they'll have a great time with their friends and they'll share these clips, and that will help, you know, that will help the growth of the game. And not to say that can't still happen. It's just hard, it's hard to talk about because yes, it is frustrating, but I also feel like anytime I talk about it, I feel like I'm being very selfish of like, no, it's my game. It should have done great. And to be fair, like everybody for the most part who has played it, like most of the reviews are positive, and like everybody who's played it has had like a great time with it. So the quality of the game, I don't think is really in question. I think it's just like a traction and discovery thing. Like it was so hard to get Bonerooms discovered. And a lot of that again was because of the timing and the short marketing cycle. But just like, you know, I don't know. It's when I first started working on Cultic, it was so easy to grow on Twitter because it was like, you know, just post things that are interesting to people, and that are digestible in short form. And it was easy to grow slowly from that. And that just, it doesn't work anymore. Like the only time I get, you know, big tweets anymore is if I do something like akin to engagement bait, which I hate doing. So
Tell me about engagement bait. What do you mean?
Something that's designed to get replies.
I see.
Because that's what the algorithm is all about right now, is replies.
Right.
So like I did that tweet. Gosh, it was a few months ago now, where, you know, I did my classic, I rotated something on the wrong axis, and I posted this clip about it, and I was just like, hey, like reply, you know, share your funniest bugs in your games that you're working on, and that was like almost 100K likes, like 1,500 replies, and it was awesome. Wow. Like it was great seeing all these people's games and all of their funny little bugs, and like, you know, it was kind of like a game dev bait tweet because like everybody can relate to it. I can relate to like all of these funny little bugs that I'm seeing. But then the next day you post something like, hey, here's this really cool thing I made for Cultic, and it's like 60 likes and it gets no traction at all. And it's and it's just weird because it's not, you know, and again, this isn't me trying to say like everybody should care about this thing I'm making, but when you have 25,000 followers that I feel like I built honestly, you know, like anytime I see a bot has followed me, I immediately block them. You know, I don't do like giveaways or like big engagement bait stuff because I don't want to build like an artificial following that way.
No.
And so it's just weird to have that, like theoretically there should be 25,000 people seeing this thing that you've posted, and then to only get like 60 engagements on it, and it's like the, you know, like the easiest form of engagement too, just a like, just a little click. And then like I was talking to a lot of my friends about Bonerooms, and like none of them knew it was out. They were like, "Oh, did that come out?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did this."
I didn't know.
Yeah, like I did this big. I did like this big. I did, you know, like there was a big release trailer or release date announcement trailer. There was like build up tweets to it. There was an announcement about the launch. There was a reminder about the launch, and it's just like, you know, people that follow me and people who like know me personally like just didn't see it. It just didn't come across their feed. And again, like, you know, it was a busy time of year. Election was going on. It's easy for stuff to get buried. I get that, but it's still just like, I don't know. It blew my mind that so many people just like didn't know, and you know, and I don't know. I don't know how much of that is a failure on my part for like marketing wrong, and how much of it is just like being unable to overcome this obstacle that is Twitter's algorithm being so messed up right now.
Right. Well, for me, I've never gotten good traction on Twitter. I've just never really received, like, you and I probably sound like complete brats right now because, you know, I've got somewhere around 20,000 followers, which I think a lot of people listening would kill for. And I completely understand that. However, when you have 20,000 followers, you're like, wow, this is like a huge asset.
Right.
For me, I've never found it to be an asset on Twitter. Because Twitter for me, I've always found Twitter is the place where people get news and they fight. That's about it. And I've never really found it to be a wonderful place to get people to enjoy entertaining content and then convert into a sale. I've never found that to be true. YouTube is a phenomenal place. For me, it is a phenomenal place to convert to a sale. If at the end of the day, that's what marketing is for, which it's to convert fans into customers. That's at least a big part of what YouTube. Most YouTubers who run their businesses, or I'm sorry, most YouTubers are business owners, whether people like it or not.
Hmm.
That's what a lot of YouTubers, including myself, it's one of the primary drivers of our content, and that's okay, and shouldn't be people shouldn't be ashamed of it. But YouTube, if you're running a business on YouTube, it's a great place to convert to customers. That's why I've always found that all of my efforts, like my games, are not nearly as I, they're not nearly as strong on the gameplay side as your games, and they're not as replayable. So I point being, they're not as sellable. I don't think my games are as sellable as your games. Um, but I've found that I can increase the sales of a game significantly by focusing pretty much all of my effort and energy on getting YouTubers to play the game,
Hmm.
as opposed to rely on Twitter at all. Like I just Instagram and Twitter, I do not even think about. Um, so that's just my strategy, is just getting YouTubers to play. So what I do before a launch of a game, and this is my plan for 2025. I don't know what your plan. I would love to hear your plan of kind of what you want to do in the future, but like what I'm going to plan on doing is, if I don't have 10 to 20,000 wish lists on my game, I'm not going to release it. I'm just not. And so the way I'm going to get those wish lists is just using YouTube. Now I can create my own content, or I can give the demo to Let's Players, and I can put them in the game. So an example would be with Bonerooms. You could have a cheat code menu, and you could type in, Septic Eye, and then all of the characters would turn green and have a little Jacksepticeye logo on their vest or on their orange suits. Then what that does is that incentivizes Jacksepticeye to play the game, right? And then you build your multiplayer base from there and your wish list base from there. So that's my approach. When it comes to social media, my approach has always been find the big YouTubers and build the audience there. So the top of the funnel is essentially YouTube, not Twitter, because you're right. Like I don't really have a problem personally with Twitter. Right now, I've been enjoying it. I'm not really looking at the algorithm very much because I never really relied on it. Um, but do you think you'll have a different strategy for your next game?
I don't think so. And I mean, like, it's kind of funny because we talked about this last time. We had our had this podcast about like our different approaches and our different positions on like the spectrum of game development, from
Yeah,
like from art to business. Like, if pure art is on one side and pure business is on the other.
yeah,
Um, and so like I recognize objectively that, like, getting big names to play your game is a great way to get people to buy it. But for
hmm,
me, I don't know. It feels like a dishonest approach to me personally.
yeah,
Just because, like, so much of game dev for me, like, granted, I do make money from it. I love that I have made a career out of it and that I get to do it full time, and that isn't lost on me. But
yeah,
it's much more about the art of game dev and the passion for it and the community around it for me. So like that's what, like, Twitter's so important to me, because Twitter is, even though it's not as good as it once was, it is still very much a community focused place. Like, I've got all these
yeah,
people I follow and I can engage with, and it's more about like building a following than trying to, like, it's about building a following of people who care about what I'm working on and care about
hmm.
me as a person than customers who will buy something of mine.
Well, I mean,
Obviously, there's overlap between the two.
well, there is, because I mean, and it's a age old debate, which is like, when somebody gives you their money, um, for a game, are you stealing the money? Are you taking the money? Are you tricking them into giving you their money? Or did they truly find value in it, right? And actually feel like it was an even trade?
Yeah.
My opinion is, if Jacksepticeye plays the game, that's awesome, because it just all that means. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you my
No,
perspective.
it's fine.
Uh, when Jacksepticeye plays the game and he gets to wear a green outfit, and I've incentivized him to play the game, I see nothing wrong with it because at the end of the day, all we're doing is we're just shouting out this game to a broader audience that would not have known. And so they're lucky, the people watching that video, they're now lucky and they are receiving value from you because this game is great. It's like why would you not want to share this great game with as many people as possible? And if they convert to customers, it's not like you forced them to convert to customers. They just converted to customers because they found value in it and they wanted to support you. So I mean, it's kind of like a viral tweet, right? A viral tweet, the algorithm did the work for you. Is that gross? No. Okay, but if Jacksepticeye does the work for you and reaches his own base, it's almost the same thing. It's just not algorithmic. It's personal.
Well, see, in my
So,
experience, first of all, which was actually really surprising for me as like a learning point, Twitch streams rarely convert to sales for me. I would say that like out of everything that's ever happened in terms of Cultic's exposure, Twitch streams have been like the least, like have had the least conversion, which makes sense from the aspect of like, you know, people aren't here to get game recommendations. They're there to just like be entertained, have background noise, whatever. For example, Cultic was on AGDQ, sorry, the speedrunning live stream the year that it came out, and it had like there were 65,000 people watching Cultic be streamed, and there was not even a blip on the sales chart.
wow. What about wish lists?
No, nothing. It was like a flat line. there was like nothing from that day.
Wow.
Which is fine. Like it was still awesome to even be on AGDQ. Like that was wild. It was great, and like people in the chat were loving the run. The speedrunner did a great job. But it was just surprising that it was surely like, oh, all these 65,000 people. You would think that like even if you convert like a percentage of those, you should see a bump. But but the other thing is that like when I want people to engage with my game who are interested in it, not people that have been like paid or incentivized to engage with it. So like your example of like, oh, give Jacksepticeye his own special suit, like that to me isn't appealing because like I don't think that he is more valuable than another person playing my game. Like when Bonerooms came out, there was I can't remember who it was that was playing it. Sorry, I'm looking to make sure I get it right. Yeah, so Forsen, who I had no idea who that was until until the stream, played Bonerooms after it came out. He was just doing like let's download random games off of Steam and play them, and he had like 9,000 people watching. So like Bonerooms comes out, and then like 30 minutes later, I check Twitch. I'm like, hey, if anybody's playing it, and there's like 9,000 people watching Bonerooms, and I was like, what the hell? And I mean, like obviously, I appreciate that he picked it up and played it, and that yes, there was exposure, but it didn't convert to anything in terms of metrics, and he engaged with the game in such an apathetic way. Like he doesn't, he doesn't know who I am. He didn't know what Bone and Rose prior to this moment. He doesn't care about the game. He's using it as a way to just have content for himself, which is fine, but like that's not valuable to me. And like he's playing the game just like complaining about stuff he doesn't understand in it, and just like complaining he doesn't get what the point of the game is, and he's just like he just like allowed random people from his audience to join his lobby, and so you've got people just like mic spam and just like AFKing and like not talking to each other, not working together, not and so like none of them are playing the game like as it's supposed to be played. None of them are getting value out of it, and so it's like you've got this stream of basically somebody making a mockery of your game. And so from a business standpoint, like if I were sitting next to you on the more business side of the game dev spectrum, this is all value, right? All you see is like this is eyes on the game, it's people seeing it, it's exposure. But for me, from a personal, committed, passionate point, it's like it's like a bunch of people are just like making fun of your game. It's like you cook this delicious meal. And then you're like, oh my god, I'm so proud of this recipe that I made, and then some gigantic influencer makes your meal and then pours an entire bottle of ketchup on top. It's just like,
Yeah.
you know, like you, they've taken this thing that you're proud of,
Yeah.
and they're making a mockery of it. And so
It's such an interesting perspective, and I love that's why I'm so glad we're friends because you and I mean, we see things so differently so often. And even from like game design, which I've learned a ton of stuff from you, by the way, Jason, with game design, and I appreciate it so much. Because you're a very you're a very principled. You're definitely a pioneer. Like there's this I don't know, I can't remember what the book is called, but there's certain personality types, and there's pioneers, and then there's also guardians. And pioneers are just like, let's go, shoot from the hip, let's make this thing happen. And that's you. You know, you've pioneered and created Cultic and Bonerooms. But I see you're also similar to a guardian too, because you are very protective of how things should be done, from from a principled perspective. Like game dev is almost this. Well, I wouldn't say it's religious, but it's something like that to you, where it's so precious and valuable
sacred,
to you.
sacred
It's
is the word.
sacred, and I don't see it as sacred. I see it as, for me, it's a business.
Right.
You know, I've got 3 kids. I just had my third kid. I've got a mortgage. I've got a wife, and I'm like, and I've got contracts with publishers. I'm like, yes, I will be as sacred as I can, but I'm gonna make this thing pop. I'm gonna do everything I can to make this thing pop, because at the end of the day, hey, if more people play my game, that hopefully that means they got more. I've made given more value to people in their lives. So if I can get 100,000 people to buy this game, the sleazy way to look at it is go, yay, I got 100,000 people to give me their money. But you can flip that and you can go, well, they found it valuable though, and hopefully 100,000 people or 200, whatever I said, have been that value has been added to their lives, right? Now, when it comes to the social media sort of the marketing discussion we were having, where it's like, I don't want someone to play this game who's going to crap all over this game, right? I agree with you there. I think that's, I don't even, you said maybe that's a good business decision, but it's not a good personal decision. I don't even know if that's a good business decision. I would never want to uh, convince anyone to play my game who is not a good fit. So like the reason why I bring up the incentivizing YouTubers to play your game, and the reason I'm a big proponent of that, is because what you do is you find 100 YouTubers. This is how I do it. You find 100 YouTubers who have played similar games and like similar games. The problem is that everybody listening right now, good luck getting any of these YouTubers' attention. And so, yes, it might seem sleazy or something. I don't know what the word is or what you're thinking, but like what I'm doing is I'm kind of fighting for the people listening right now who are like, how do I get these people who have millions of subscribers to notice me, some small unknown developer, but I think I have a good game? And so my approach has always been find 100 YouTubers who like similar games, and the way you get their attention is you incentivize them just a little bit, give them a little bonus, a little meme in the game, right? Something in the game to catch their freaking attention so that you can finally get your game noticed. So that's my approach, and hopefully that jump starts the game, gets it onto the Steam front page, and then it kickstarts the algorithm on Steam. That's been my approach. Granted, you know, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. And I will agree with you that YouTubers, sometimes it doesn't convert to anything, any sales or wish lists. I've seen both, right? Sometimes I've seen it actually does convert. For in particular, Jacksepticeye, he's so what's the word? He's so positive when he plays indie games. He loves indie games. And when he plays them, he's so positive and he speaks so highly of the developers and he's respectful.
That's good.
And so yeah, those are the kind of YouTubers that I reach out to, the ones I know are going to be respectful of the game, you know. So that's just my strategy, man. But I do respect the purity in your mind about how you approach all this. I just at the end of the day, for me, I'm just like, how do I keep this business running, and how do we keep making games, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like
So
if your goal is to maximize the profit from your game and like through any means necessary, then I don't think anybody would ever want to listen
It's not.
to not like nobody would ever want to listen to me for advice on that because like people like especially for like people wondering how like chapter 2 is taking so long is because like it's this isn't like an 8 to 5 grind for me anymore. Like
Mhm.
there's days where like I'm not going to get anything done because like a game developer friend of mine wanted help with a project, or like
Yeah.
I'm writing music for somebody for free or voice acting for free just to help another developer out, or it's like that's I don't know. It's because like the community and the game development as an art form is so important to me that I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
Well, a good question that I would hand to you, and I'm giving you I'm letting you win the argument here. My question to you is, if we gave you 50 years of making games, if you spent those 50 years being generous with your time and being uh, principled with your craft, if that was one path, or the other path is being hyper focused on marketing, which one do you think would be more successful in the long run?
well, I mean, if you're like, it's kind of like like billionaires don't get to be billionaires by being good people, and it's kind of the same thing as like if your goal is always to like make the most money possible, you're probably going to be skirting some morals here and there.
Yeah.
And obviously there's exceptions to that. This is not like but it's like you look at like mobile games and games with like predatory microtransactions. They make boatloads of money, and it's like if that's okay with you, like for example
Yeah.
with Bonerooms, I've had several people tell me like, oh, you should just made the game free to play and then had like microtransactions, and I'm like, that probably would have gotten more people in the door. I'm not denying that, but that I have zero interest in that being the way that I make my bread and butter, because to me that's I don't know. It just doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't mean it's like morally right or wrong, objectively right or wrong. It's just like in the art form of game dev, I want my success to be made because people like organically discover what I'm working on and decide for themselves like, oh, this looks really cool, and then they pay for it. I don't want there to be people coming in the door only because my game is free. I don't want that to be the reason that people get in the door. And again, if you're looking at it from a business perspective, that's dumb, right? It's like, no, if you get the most people in the door, that's the important thing. And so but that just doesn't appeal to me. And I especially don't want like a Steam discussions board full of people complaining and telling me what I should do with the game who couldn't even be bothered to pay $1.50 for it. Like that's the other thing.
It's the way my brain works is funnels, and if the start of the funnel is a free demo, if you get 200,000 people to play a free demo, it'll probably convert at a percentage, 1 to 5, like 1 to 5%.
Maybe.
I mean, that's how tons of digital businesses operate, and that's actually what that's what wish lists are. It's a funnel. So that's why demos like David Whaley's demo is why it is going to blow up, because he starts with a free demo, he brings in hundreds of thousands of wish lists, and then they convert. Right?
Yeah, this is an argument against demos, to be fair. Like Cultic had a demo. I recognize the value of demos. I'm talking about
free
giving
content, right?
Right.
Right. So it's like if man, it's going to be it would be a long argument. I'm the kind of person who I try and be balanced with the way I'm thinking about things, because on one hand, I've heard both you and Julian, he's the creator of Lens Island. Both of you guys are so like principled. It's like, I'm going to make a great game and people will show up, right? And if people don't show up, then I guess the game didn't deserve it, right?
Sure.
And the big question is, this is a really good question for you. Do you think a great game can get buried?
Oh yeah. It happens all the time. Especially even just like in the boomer shooter scene, the retro shooter scene. I've got friends and fellow developers who are making awesome games that I would say quality wise are on par with, if not better, than Cultic, that are struggling. But the thing is, like,
or was it the time they launched?
The timing definitely is a part of it. Like a lot, I always I always like to say that a big part of why I think Cultic did well was timing. I started working on it at a time where the indie shooter scene was still relatively small and expanding, where like you had like Dusk and Ion Fury were like your two big ones.
Yep. Yep.
And then I got the game out as fast as humanly possible because I saw like well, A, I was running out of money, but but B, I saw how big the scene was getting, and you had all these games like that are people developing right alongside like Forgive Me Father and Sulaco and like
Yep.
all of these games that look awesome. They have like whole teams behind them, and I'm like, crap, I have to get my game out the door.
Yep.
So like if I were to have released Cultic Chapter 1 today and had started
Mhm.
marketing it a year ago rather than in 2020, I bet it probably wouldn't have done nearly as well as it did.
So
But
go ahead.
I would say the other thing is you're talking about like, um, like if you make a great game, you hope people will show up, and if they don't, then that's just it. That's kind of how I feel. Like I would rather have to quit game dev and go back to it being a hobby and doing something else full time than to start doing like like microtransactions and stuff like that. Like I would rather go back to doing something else full time and keep this
Mhm.
as a hobby than have to like violate what I would consider like my
Yeah.
principles on game
Yeah.
development. And that's just a personal thing. Like this isn't me trying to say
No,
like
I
if
think
you have microtransactions you suck. Like that's not at all
no.
what I'm saying.
Well, I think most people, including myself, would all. I think we all agree, But you've just dropped like the most morally sinister marketing tools out there. But like, there's other stuff. There's other stuff like incentivizing YouTubers to play a game or paying YouTubers to play a game. It's like I wouldn't say it's immoral. I can understand why it would feel gross.
Yeah, I don't think it's immoral
Absolutely.
either. That's just it's a
Yeah,
business
it's
thing.
just kind of gross, or it's just not. I guess it's not really part of, and it's not something I love either. It's like when I'm putting my kids to bed, and this is what happens with me every night. I'm putting my kids to bed, and then I'm hanging out with my wife. There's a switch that flips every night, which turns me into it at least turns on half of my brain turns into how do I keep them safe? How do I keep my business afloat? How do I survive in difficult times?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this sort of fight or flight mechanism that will cause me to be more business minded. And you may have noticed that the older people get, the longer they stay in their business, the easier it is for them to justify sketchy decisions, right? Because they just want to build their business and they want to grow and they've got a family and they just become more interested in staying in surviving than the integrity of a project, right? And so I really, really do. I know that about myself that I'm at risk of becoming that way, just because we'll probably have more kids, and I'll just become more and more of a dad, and it's like that's the only thing on my mind, is keeping everyone happy and safe and financially secure. So I understand that it's a threat. And that's why I love talking to people like you. And Julian is another person like this at Flow Studio. It's like I love keeping you guys um, in my circle because you do ground me and keep me thinking more about the integrity of a project. And I'll say this for 2025 for me, and I want to talk to you about 2025 and what it looks like for you. I do want to go back to the basics where I do what I'm best at. I have a super small budget. I make small, personal, tight games that have my voice in them. And I will admit, for the last 3 years, I've been so stressed out
Mm-hmm.
about making this business grow and being profitable, signing deals, blah, blah, blah. Is the game going to return on its investment? How are the wish lists? Blah, 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 blah. All that stuff that just frankly killed me. Like, dude, my body was like, it felt like it was broken. My stomach was always upset because of this stress of trying to keep this game, Twisted Tower, keep it alive and keep it funded and keep it and make sure that it's a viral game when I launch it. And it's like I wish I could have just if I could go back in time, I would just say, I just want to make a great game. And I don't want to worry about anything else. So there's a part all I'm saying is there's a part of me that's like, Jason is absolutely right. But I think it's a balance of being a business minded person and creatively to have creative integrity. You
Yeah.
know, so
Well, I mean, like, and again, there's a while there's definitely a gap in like where we land on that spectrum. There's also a gap, I think, without going into specifics, in how financially successful we are in game
yeah,
development. But that's the thing
yeah,
is like I don't have a family. Like we live like very comfortably within our means, and this is not like a comparison of us two. I'm just saying
yeah,
I don't have like big goals of like being
yeah,
being wealthy and super successful and like super famous. I like making games. I've done it as a hobby for as long as I can think, and the
yeah.
fact that Cultic blew up at all was like a complete fluke.
Right.
Like it was completely unexpected. And one thing I've been really concerned about is that Cultic would be like my only successful game, like because of the timing and because of it kind of being on the like Cultic's part of a fad as far as I'm concerned. I love retro shooters and I love obviously I love Cultic, but like I'm not blind to the fact that a lot of its traction is because retro shooters are having a revival. Just like if I had been making
Yeah.
a Minecraft clone in 2011,
I think that you're not giving yourself enough credit. I have considered you, Jason, to be one of the smartest game designers I know. I would say you're probably the smartest game designer. By designer, I mean you have an understanding of how to make a good game that is challenging and it's balanced and it incentivizes the player and gives them rewards. You came in and you gave us so much. Like Felipe and I learned so much from you in the last year, like crazy amounts when it comes to game design. And I think sure the pixel art is well, I mean you're right. I think it's like the sugary part of the game, the thing that gets people in the door.
right.
But I think they wouldn't stick around very long if it didn't have good design, right?
Right. Yeah, but I
So
mean, like, I don't know that I've kind of been trying to tell myself something similar. I was like, no, like Cultic surely wasn't a fluke. But then Bonerooms comes out to basically nothing. And again, I every time I talk about this, I feel like I'm sounding like so entitled, and I really hope that people understand. Like I get that all of the decisions I made marketing wise on it, like the fact that I'm rushing it, I'm releasing it at Halloween, I'm not putting money and ad spend behind it. It makes
mhm.
sense that it didn't get much traction, but it was just kind of like, you just kind of expect more. And I guess this just brought me back down to earth. And
Yeah,
so now
yeah,
talking about 2025 plans, I had to think about like, well, what do I want to do for my next game? Because I grew Cultic from nothing on Twitter, just like just talking about the game and showing stuff off, and that worked. And maybe that was just because the pixel art and the color palette was unique enough that it stopped people and they wanted to look at it.
yeah,
And maybe that's just not going to work for my next
yeah,
project. And so I don't really know what my plan is because right now it's to work on chapter 2, and of course chapter 2 is still with 3D Realms, and so I don't know what marketing is going to look like for that. There hasn't really been any marketing from the publisher side since 3D Realms Live stopped.
yeah.
I'm not sure if that's going to ramp back up or not. My plan is to just keep doing what I do.
Well,
I've tried to ramp up posts on Steam because there's a lot of people that have left Twitter and are relying on Steam for news about the game now. So I've been trying
yeah,
to post my devlogs on there and little updates on there, and I hope people appreciate that.
yeah, yeah.
But like, I'm just gonna keep doing what I do because I don't have the time to switch it up right now.
No,
It's
I
just
wouldn't switch it up. Why do you feel like, let me ask you this. Why do you feel like it's a bad thing that the pixel art and the color palette was what initially made the game successful?
because my next game won't be like that. I don't plan to make another retro shooter. And so
Is there a
like
reason why?
because I'm not like a gigantic retro shooter like guy. I played Doom and all the build engine games when I was a kid, and so that's I've got a soft spot for them. There's a lot of nostalgia there for me, and and Cultic's a game that I've wanted to make for a long time. So it is like retro shooters do have a special nostalgic place for me.
Yeah.
But like the genre, in my opinion, has steered so hard towards these like like crazy fast, crazy hard
Yeah.
Doom Eternal whatever style games, and that doesn't mesh with me at all. Like I don't like Doom Eternal. I'm a Doom 2016 guy,
Hmm.
and so like it would be one thing if the if the whole genre had kind of stayed relatively niche
Yeah.
and had kind of stuck to what made those games so special, which I think like when Dusk first came out, it was so important because it represented a return to the basics. At a time when most games on the market were Call of Duty and like Last of Us and all, they're all like big story focused games. And then you're like, no, we're just going to go back to shotgun. Like that's where we're going back to shotgun. um, and I don't know. And this is just another personal thing. I'm not saying that Doom Eternal is a bad game or that any of the games emulating that crazy fast style are bad, because
Yeah.
that's clearly not true because the players love them.
Sure.
It's just like for me personally, that's not a goal of mine, and that's not the kind of games that I play. So I think that I don't really think I have a place in the retro shooter scene after Cultic
Right.
because I don't want to make Cultic again. I don't want to make the same thing again. And I also don't want to make the kinds of games that have mass appeal right now.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so, and that's fine. Like I have tons of game ideas I want to work on. I'm not giving up on game development, but my next game isn't going to be a pixel art game. And so it's just going to be going back to kind of my artistic style, which is a little more cartoony, which hasn't really ever caught people's eye in the past. And so I'm recognizing that as a challenge I'm going to face. Like, if I'm going to continue marketing on this avenue of just catching people's eye on Twitter,
Yeah.
I have to figure something else out.
Well, that is, what's so interesting about this conversation is I think that that's what a lot of people listening right now, they're exactly in your shoes, which is like, wait. It's like the question, I've had this happen to me before. In fact, this happened this year, and I'm 10 years into game dev. What happened to me this year was, wait, what am I good at again? Like what are my fortes? I completely lost sight of what my fortes are. And so I've got a list. I'll write down mine right now. So Thomas's fortes, because this is so important, because I actually met with one of my mentors yesterday to try and figure out, okay, how do I approach game dev in 2025 when it's harder to come by money. It's not impossible to find money with publishers. There's plenty of money flying around. It's just not as plentiful. That's okay. So you might have to make a game that's smaller, and you might have to make a game that's way more focused. And I see Cultic as a very focused game. It's a game that it hits all of the things that you're good at, and it's only doing that. There's no fluff. It's all, every strength Jason has was put into Cultic, and there's no weakness, like, from my perspective. So when it comes to me, I've realized for 2025, and then I want to see if you're interested in listing out your fortes. For me, my forte is mood, story, music, and then minimalistic art. Those are my four fortes. And if I ever make a game again, I'm probably only ever going to focus on those four things. I'll dip into other things and I'll try them, and I've done that. But I've found that whenever you dip into something that's not your forte, don't do it on a commercial game. Do it on the side and figure it out on the side first before you put it into your game. So, for example, me making a first-person shooter, it's not really my forte. Yet we spent 3 years on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's going to turn out well, but it was a painful, expensive process trying to pigeonhole something I have no experience with and juxtapose it next to all of my other fortes. And what it did was, at least for the first 2 years of development, it was kind of a cancer for the game. It's like the game could have been awesome, but I decided it was going to be a first-person shooter. And so it became this huge, painful process of trying to work around a flaw in my own skill set. And so for you, is there like, what is it about Cultic, or what can we draw from Cultic that was your forte? You know what I mean?
Oh man.
What did you do so well in Cultic that's outside of it being a retro shooter? Like what made it special? That is in like that is you that you were born with, like something that's deep inside of you. Is there
I
anything?
don't know. I mean, I'm not usually very good at talking myself up. Uh, I don't know. I think that I think the design. I think that like the conciseness and the cleanliness of the design. Like just
Yeah.
well, like the utilitarian design of the arsenal, for example, where like pretty much every weapon has its place and its role, and as soon as the roles are
Yeah.
filled, the arsenal design stops. And that was just a big goal for the game. It's like I want it to be clean. That was why like the ability system got cut. Is because it was fluff. It was gimmicky stuff that polluted the game's design. But I think more so like Cultic's focus, I think more so comes from the stuff that I'm not good at, which is like like story writing for one thing. It's not really something I'm familiar with. And then like technical complexity from like a code standpoint.
Mhm.
Like I'm very much like a C minus grade coder. Like I'm
Yeah, me too.
my coding is self taught. It's very basic. And so like I don't tackle like technically mechanically complex things. Like the quick save system in Cultic is probably about the biggest technical achievement in that game.
Yeah.
But then you've got like people I know like Ben, the Frog Monster developer, who just like I'm just gonna make my own engine. Like that blows my mind. It could not be me.
Oh man.
But
And
he
that's like the most pure game dev out there,
yeah.
you know, just doing everything from scratch.
But
Well,
but you were talking about how Twisted Tower was like your foray into first person development, something you're not
yeah.
used to, and that's kind of what's kind of softened the blow for Bonerooms being a bit of a flop. Is the fact that that's kind of what it was for me. Because it was it was like me learning how to do like physically based rendering, like like Cultic's all flat shaded pixel art, crunch down textures. So before Bone Rooms, I had never messed with like specular, metallics, like
Yeah.
anything like that, normal mapping. And so Bone Rooms was a learning exercise for me in doing more modern texturing and shading, which I'm still not particularly good at. But it was a learning experience, and I'd never done like real online multiplayer before. Like
Yeah.
yes, I made Graveyard Shift 2, but like Graveyard Shift 2 was like a tutorial baby. Like it was like following a tutorial and then like trying to twist that into something that was barely playable. And it is. I mean, Graveyard Shift 2 was broken.
Yeah.
And so Bone Rooms was the first time I was like, I'm gonna make like an actual online game with like
Yeah.
functioning lobbies and like voice chat and like all the stuff I'd never done before. And so it was like I'm going to do this with a really small game, and so that's what Bones was great for. Is that even regardless of the fact that it wasn't really it wasn't successful, it didn't really blow up, it didn't really make any money or anything like that. I did learn a ton from working on it, and those lessons I will get to carry forward into my next
Yeah.
project. So like I don't regret making Bone Rooms.
No.
I had a blast making it. I had so much fun testing it with the people from my Discord. It was such a blast to work on.
Right.
And in a way, it's kind of nice that it didn't really go anywhere, because that means that I don't have to split my time between Bone Rooms and Cultic anymore.
Oh yeah.
So in a way, it's nice that I just get to like, because the release was clean. It was it was relatively bug free, and I get to put a nice bow on it and put it in my portfolio, and then I get to get back on Cultic now. Whereas
Yep.
if it had blown up, then now this is something that I have to work on. Like it's something that I have to
Uh-huh.
support, and that would take
Well,
time away from my main project. So it's kind of a double edged sword there.
yeah. Yeah. Just to give you some encouragement, I I'm one of your biggest fans, and I think that when I think about what you're really gifted at, it just comes naturally to you. I totally agree. Concise design is definitely one of your biggest fortes. But you mentioned physically based rendering, and I'm sitting here going, I'll speak for me. I won't tell you what I would do, or what you should do. I'll just tell you what I'm doing is I've realized that one of my gifts as an artist is I call it precious modeling. It's creating precious, cute little models that are representative of something more complex. So it's almost like cozy games or like retro games, minimalistic, cute models
Hmm.
that represent something bigger. And you did that all through Cultic. Everything is so rudimentary. That's a skill in and of itself. To be able to distill something down into its cutest form. And I'm not saying Cultic is cute, but I hope you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's just shrinking and simplifying. And so when you mention stuff like PBR, I'm like, I'm not going to do that for my next game, I don't think.
Neither
I'm
will
going to
I.
go back. I'm going to strip it out. What's that?
I said neither will I. No, you and I are actually very similar in that respect. Where like
I
my
have this. I have a affinity for velvet looking things. So like if you don't use specular and you don't use metallic and you don't use you know yeah specular and metallic or normal maps, everything has this velvet soft look, and that there's a built-in baked in nostalgia with that.
yeah.
And so when I one of your skills is you're good at minimalistic modeling. You're very good at that. When I see Bonerooms, I'm like, there's skill there. But then when I see Cultic, I go, there's talent there. There's something like visually. It's just there's not everyone can do that. That's it's not the pixels, it's the color and it's the shapes that you've mastered. I don't see the pixels as being the forte. I see it's like, no, he's a master at fractaling things down into their truest form. And there's something cute and funny and charming about that skill. And so if I were you, I would not abandon that talent. I would lean into it. And that's what I'm doing for 2025. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think like my general like if you ever looked at my old project Unholy Commotion, which is what I was working on before Cultic, it's that's a very good representation of my actual art style. Like if I just
What's it
had
called?
Unholy Commotion, it's on itch.
Cool.
That is a really good representation of like my typical art style.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it is it's you know it's very basic, it's a lot of like diffuse only shading, very like
Sure.
cutesy art style stuff, but that's
Yeah.
kind of that's probably what I will return to. And obviously I've learned a lot, I've learned a lot with all the work I've done on Cultic, like my modeling skill has increased so much and my
Yeah.
texturing and everything. But working on with PBR materials and more like I guess realistic models for Bonerooms was it was a fun learning experience, but it only works with a game as small as Bonerooms for me because like
Sure.
it takes like an entire day for me to make like I modeled out like a defibrillator paddle for Bonerooms the other day. It took me like all day. And
I know.
and that's like a relatively simple shape and a
Yeah.
relatively
Yeah.
simple texture, but just like making like a high clear like a high resolution model like that,
Yep.
and then doing clean texture work on it, and then doing all the normal mapping and all the metallics and all the wear on it, and then like
Sure.
it took me like all day, and that's not
Yeah.
it's okay if it's like this is an item I'm adding, and this will be like a big chunk of new content for the game, but like for Cultic, I could have never done that. You know, it's like when I add a new prop into Cultic, it's like this is a rectangle, like
Yep.
this
Exactly.
is a cube, and that's because I've only got 20 minutes to make this model, and then I have to move
Yep.
on to something else.
That's
Um,
exactly right. It's also, and I'm speaking from personal experience, working on a game that has PBR everything. I've been working on it for 2.5 years or 3 years. I can't remember how long. Twisted Tower, it's everything. It's the normal maps, it's the metallics, it's the specular. Everything is in every single material, and it's fairly high fidelity.
it
We
looks
we
great.
still tried to keep it low poly, mainly for performance and making sure people didn't think it was AAA, because you don't want to sell a game for $15 that looks AAA, in my opinion, because you're going to get a disconnect with
Yeah,
the players. All that said, I can speak from personal experience. If you want to quadruple your budget, do that. Add layers of complexity to your models. Throw in some normal maps, throw in some metallic, throw in some specular. A lot of people are thinking, well, a lot of software will just generate it automatically for you, so who cares? Like if you use Substance. The problem is that you spend I spend a lot of time tweaking normal map values, tweaking metallic values, tweaking specular values. Baking is a whole other conundrum when it comes to specular, because specular information gets stripped on the bake, as does normal map and metallic information. It's all stripped on the bake. And so you have to, it basically quadruples your game's. Maybe I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but it quadruples, if not maybe just doubles your production time and the budget, and also just how it's running, the frame rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting here going, I've thought a lot about this. If you're not aware, if it's not obvious, I've thought a lot about this year because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna double my budget and the time it takes to finish my game. And what does it mean? Well, it means the game is gonna look similar to a lot of other games because most games do have typical PBR texturing and they try and use realistic models. So I've decided, why would I do that for my next game when I can just go hyper minimalistic and
Right.
stand out,
Well,
right?
that's the beauty of being past the Xbox 360, PS4 era, is that like I feel like the graphics arms race is kind of over. Not that companies aren't still trying to make like the best looking game out there, but it's not important to a lot of gamers anymore. And there obviously are still people who are like graphics above all else, but I mean, you look at like the success of like, I mean, hell, look at Lethal Company, man. Like graphics.
Yep.
Lethal Company's got a great, charming art style, but like from a technical standpoint, it's very rudimentary, and that's fine. It works great for that game, and I mean the sales on it speak for itself. Like you can make an amazing game and sell it with just the concept, which I think is great. Like it's so
Yeah.
nice to see that happening, because it was like, in when you're back in like the Xbox 360 era, it's like all anybody cared about was graphics, and that was just like, it was like everyone's just trying to make like the most realistic thing they possibly can. And I mean, not that that didn't produce some amazing, beautiful games, but it's so nice that like we can just focus on the gameplay. Like Minecraft would have never happened if the only focus anybody ever had was on graphics. Like, a game
Yep.
like that wouldn't have been possible if infinite procedural voxel world had to also come with photorealistic graphics. It wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
And so I know there's, and that's great, and especially that that a game like Cultic, that's just like, hey, I'm going to draw this thing poorly, but I'm going to crush it down into a 128 pixel
Exactly.
sprite, and then it doesn't matter. And if that can be successful,
Yeah.
then yeah, the world's your oyster. But I think it's so funny hearing you talking about PBR materials and like like doing baking and stuff, because I'm like all the stuff for Bonerooms, I just draw it all in Photoshop, and
Yeah.
I just do the layers manually because I don't understand
Well, I
how to do
know.
the
I mean,
baking.
I do that too, and it takes a lot of time.
It does. It takes forever.
Does it actually add value to your game? In terms of standing out, not really,
Right.
because most games look that way.
Right.
Um, so I actually one time I stripped all of the PBR, or all of the specular metallic normal maps. I stripped it out of Twisted Tower, and I sent footage to one of the developers of Cult of the Lamb, and they were like, "That is way better." And everyone else on Twitter, I did a poll. Everyone else on Twitter was like, "No, this looks worse." And in my head, I'm like, I don't care if it looks worse. I care if it stands out. Now, granted, I don't think it looks worse. I actually like it looking more toony.
Mm-hmm.
But my whole point saying all of that is, if something looks worse, or it doesn't necessarily matter if something looks worse, because better or worse is not really what sells a game visually. It's more like, how does it feel?
Right.
Do I identify with, does it capture me? Not, does it look good?
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's a style thing. I remember this conversation that I had. It might have been like at Gamescom, but talking about like where I'm picking my battles on Cultic when I was developing it, or I still am, but and it's like John, to like graphical fidelity, like, okay, I'm modeling out this like garage for this map, and I could spend a week populating this garage with all manner of little props and details and all these little things, but at the end of the day, my game is never going to look better than every AAA game that's coming out. Like no one's ever going to play my games for graphical fidelity. So instead, what I'm going to focus on is the things that my game can bring to the table, and that that's like gameplay and design and simplicity, yada yada. So that's the stuff I'm going to focus on, because like focusing on trying to have like the most detailed environments is a losing battle for me, because like no matter how much time I spend on it, even if I made it incredible, at best my game now looks similar to every other game on the market.
Yep.
And so like
Yep.
it's not, that's not a battle worth choosing. And it's the same thing with like the these materials I'm making for Bone Rooms. It works for that game's art style, because like if you're gonna make a backrooms game, I think kind of like this, at
Yeah.
least it
It
being
needs to feel real.
yeah, it needs to be like a little bit realistic.
Yeah.
But I don't really have any interest in doing that on any other game because like it's not really my style, and it's just God, it takes so much time. It's so time consuming, and for
Yeah.
something that, in my opinion, I think from a stylistic standpoint, I think Bone Rooms is probably the worst looking game I've ever made. From like a PBR modeling, it's from a technical standpoint, it's the
Yes.
quality is higher than any other game I
Yes.
made. But like if I look at Bone Rooms and Unholy Commotion side by side, even though Unholy Commotion is like 6 years ago of my
Yeah.
modeling talent,
Yeah.
and learning, I think Unholy Commotion looks better. Like it's more charming, it has better style.
Yeah.
So it's just like I don't know,
Hmm.
but Bone Rooms' style works for that game. But
Yeah.
that's just not the kind of game, I'm probably not going to make something like that ever again.
And by the way, I wrote down three other things I think you're really gifted at, just to give you some encouragement.
Oh well, thank you.
You're really good at creating a sense of place. Setting, you're really good at that. Creating a feeling of like a location,
Hmm.
and I want to be in that location. Cultic, you did so good with that. Nostalgia, you're really good at creating a nostalgic vibe. Your music, and you write it yourself, right?
Right.
Your music combined with your use of color and that simplicity, it just gives this feeling of like, I feel like I've played this game in my past. And I don't think that's because of the pixel art. I think it's something else. Um, and so those, I just wanted to tell you those things just to encourage you. And I would lean into those if I were you.
Well,
But
thank you. I
you know,
appreciate that.
yeah, man. I wrote down a question here for you. Um, do you do you have any um are you ready to be done with Cultic?
Oh yeah, I've been ready to be done with Cultic since when did Cultic come out? October 13th, 2022. I've been ready to be done with it since then.
Holy crap, dude. What's pushing you other than the fact that you've signed a contract?
Well, I don't contractually owe anybody Chapter 2.
Really?
Yeah. No, it's so like I want Chapter 2 to exist. I want to finish the story. I love everything that Nick and I have made so far for Chapter 2. But what I love about game development, is the exploration of ideas and watching them come together. Whoops, sorry, I smacked my microphone. I love like being able to create new ideas and like take these ideas that are in my head and like get them on paper and see if they actually like work, and
Sure.
trying out new features and functions, and that is almost completely absent when you are creating a continuation of an existing game, because like chapter 2 isn't going to switch up the cultic formula. Like it's more of what makes cultic fun. It's more of what people experience. I mean, yes, there's new ideas here and there, and there's new locations, and but like it doesn't reinvent the gameplay. It doesn't reinvent the pacing. And so right now it's just kind of linear content grind, which for me is torture.
Yeah.
It's just like all day every day is level design and creating 3D models. It's just, and that's it. Like it's part of the job, but like getting to switch over to Bone Rooms and explore something completely new, and just like, oh, I'm going to add this item and see how it changes the multiplayer
Exactly.
gameplay. Like you can like this defibrillator that I'm working on. This one item, I spent like a day modeling it, a day implementing it, and it will completely change the formula for the gameplay. Because it lets you like revive teammates, and it lets you do some other fun things, and so you've created this one asset that then brings like hours of value to your game. But with Cultic's like linear content grind, I spend a month or two working on a map that takes 30 minutes to beat, and that feels so awful. It's just
Yeah.
like, and so I'm ready to be done with that. I might not, I've said before, I think Cultic is probably the biggest game I will ever make. Like I'm sure
Isn't that so funny?
I'm sure
I'm in this
I'm sure you feel the same way with Twisted Tower. Yeah.
dude, I'm spending my time right now, and I've sent you screenshots. I'm making like cute isometric, like precious little vignettes. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like working on a Harry Potter, like I'm gonna do a video on it, but like my brain is so fried from making a big game,
Yep.
working with publishers, signing deals, hitting milestones. I am so burnt out.
You know what that is? That feeling? That's you sliding closer to me on the spectrum.
No, dude, I'm always gonna be evil.
We're gonna be bumping elbows soon.
But I will say, man, I was hanging out with some friends who are one of them is a business owner, and he was talking about grinding and working so hard, and he said, as long as I get home, and I feel like I've just worked as hard as I possibly can, I feel like I did my job. And I said, I disagree with you. I said, I'm at the point now in my career where if I'm grinding and I'm burning both ends, my work suffers, actually. The indie game world and the YouTube world, you're only I would say there's a one-to-one correlation between calm, patient, joyful work and success. It's a one-to-one correlation. You're as successful as you are calm. You're as successful as you are joyful. You are successful as you are patient. So I'm done with the grind. I'm just not going back.
Yeah.
And I did it for 2 years. I'm like, I'm freaking done with this because
Yeah.
it hurts everything. It hurts your family, it hurts your relationships, and it hurts your game.
Yeah. People
Have you
talk
found that
about
to be true?
Oh yeah. People like pretty much I would say almost universally, people feel that like the weakest maps in Cultic are the last couple of them. And that is when I was working like 16-hour days,
Yep.
and working on the weekends and just like no social life, never leaving my desk. And that's one of the reasons that like chapter 2 is taking so long is because I don't do that anymore. That was a situation of I'm running out of money, my savings are dwindling, I have to get this game done.
Yeah.
And so I'm working, I'm working ridiculous hours, ridiculous days. I'm not taking any time for myself,
Yeah.
and I don't do that now. Like I'm working healthy hours now. I take my weekends. And it sucks because that does mean chapter 2 is taking longer, but I'm not doing it again.
Yep.
It's not worth it. And if somebody wants to tell me that like I should be grinding to get Cultic out sooner, then they're not the kind of person I want in my community, because that's just like
I agree.
Nobody should be working those kinds of hours. It's ridiculous.
I agree. I always told my team, I said, if you work more than 40 hours a week, don't.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the rule at my studio. And if you ask anybody who's worked with me, if they ever told me they worked over 40 hours, I said, they almost got in trouble, honestly. Because in my opinion, anything over 40 hours a week, and I may even change my opinion to less, like I may even make it less, like 35 hours a week. If you're working over that, your game is just going to become mute and bland and repetitive, because I don't think a human being, unless you're like a genius, I don't think a human being can be that creative at that frequency, at that level of grind.
Right.
Now, some people can. So I guess I could just speak for myself. I have to be in a very calm state. I told Kelsey, I told my wife, I said, I want my life to look like jazz. Like calm cocktail jazz. That's my goal for the rest of my life. When people are around me, when people are watching my videos, and when they're working with me on games, I want them to feel like it's a calm, chill cocktail hour. And it's just there's a rhythm and there's a flow and it's creative and it changes every once in a while, but it's got a rhythm to it. There's nothing aggressive about it. That's really my goal with game dev for 2025, because I'm not going back. I used to say burnout wasn't real. Like I would tweet like, just power through it. You're just probably being lazy. No, it's real. It's bad and it's not good for your project. Not at all.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I'm like I think Cultic's the biggest game I'll ever work on. I don't think I ever want to work on a game that takes me more than a year again. I I don't know, maybe like 2 years maximum for something a little beefier. But like I really, game dev is all about exploring ideas and like and just learning, and you don't really get that when you're just pumping content into the same game. And
Yep.
again, this isn't like a condemnation of longer games or anything like that. It's just like me personally, because that's why I don't want to work at like a studio. I don't want to be like just a guy who cranks out 3D models for a studio, because to me personally, like that's not, like 3D modeling is probably my least favorite part of game dev. It takes so long.
Yep.
And because I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not like super passionate about art. I'm not a great artist. I'm just like a functional artist. So I don't know. It's there's a lot of value to me in just in games like Bonerooms, where it's just like exploring a small idea, making something fun, and then getting it out there. But
Yep.
as I learned with Bonerooms, that's not necessarily the path to sustainability. And so
Yeah.
and so that, you know, when you talk about my 2025 strategy, I don't know. Like once chapter 2's out, I don't know what I'm going to do next, because
Well, it sounds like small is about the only thing you've said is your strategy.
yeah, it's, well, just like not something as big as Cultic, and not something quite so linear. I think I'd like to focus on things that are like, I think my next game is definitely going to be procedural, like have a little bit of procedural generation, because I think what I want to do right now, after 4 years of working on something that's just linear, I want something that's the opposite of that. Like I want to have a game
Same here, dude.
I want to have a game that I can drop a new, like I can drop a new enemy and a new weapon into it, and then you get, you know, that's 4 new hours of
Yeah.
time with it. You know, like,
Well, I found.
because like
Go ahead.
my favorite game right now that I've been playing is Crab Champions. I've been
Oh, nice.
and it's just like, I mean, that dev will put out an update that's just like, he's like, oh yeah, I made this enemy a little more aggressive, and you're like, oh, let's go, time for a new run. and then because it's just, you know, but right now it's, in order to make content for Cultic, I've got to spend like 2 months like doing level design and making new assets and making new music and making new textures, and that's just to get 20 minutes of gameplay out of it.
I know.
And
I know.
it's exhausting.
I will say though, as a millennial father who's exhausted by the time my kids go to bed, I do love linear games.
Mhm.
I love the simplicity of jumping in and experiencing a story. So it's not that I don't like them, it's that to make them, it is such a
Oh, yeah.
gamble.
I agree.
And it's so expensive. You know, Crab Champions, the reason this game, I wouldn't call it a gamble pretty much ever, is because it's an early access game.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that excites me about early access games, because what you're doing is you're sort of just, your game is proven before you invest in it to some degree. Like maybe you spend 3 months on a little prototype, and then you release it on early access, and if it flops, it's like, well, maybe I don't need to invest in this anymore. Or what can I do differently? Because like what happened with me is we put in so much effort and time and money into Twisted Tower. And granted, I do think it's going to do well, but we just went through hell because we didn't prove anything. You know, we didn't ever go in and try and prove it to an audience or drop a demo. But you definitely don't want to do early access for a linear game. At least
Right.
I don't think so.
No.
So I'm excited, like you are. I'm excited by the idea of creating a simple loop, and it's really, really fun, and it's really creative. Like
And you
the
just get
player
to pump
has,
things into it.
yeah,
But things
yeah,
that are
and just-
meaningful, that
Mhm.
matter, and that's like, I don't know, like I'm very burned out on Cultic. It's been a huge help having Nick around. Just not only to have someone to split a bit of the creative burden with, but like just having someone to kind of bounce things off of, and to share, to just share in the experience has been great. But I think the problem with having Nick around is that it has enabled so much scope creep. It's just like the maps in chapter 1 are by and large very lazy. There's a lot of asset recycling. There's a lot of like keeping things as simple as humanly possible. Because I'm just like, I don't have the time. I don't have time to do anything more than this. And I don't think that makes them all bad, but it definitely doesn't make them like a spectacle. And in chapter 2, because I have more time to work with, I'm not crunching all the time, and because I have Nick helping me out, like the maps have gotten so much more complex. It's just like, F it, why don't we have 6 music tracks in this one map and like all these new
Yes.
set pieces and all of these scripted sequences and the maps. I mean, like the shopping mall map took like 3 months to finish, and it's like 30 minutes of gameplay. But it was
Yeah.
just like, no, why don't we have all these, unique stores? And yeah, let's put a freaking movie theater in here and have like movies running in the theaters and like
Oh gosh.
and it makes for like a really but like that's never happening again. Like that was the spectacle map of the chapter.
That's right.
And it's great. Like I think it turned out awesome. I love that map. But oh my god, when you finish like
Yeah.
when I came to the end of 3 months of working on that one map and then I play it and I look at my playtime and it's like 22 minutes, that's just like, oh my god, it feels like a waste of my time. And I know that like to the consumer who doesn't have 2 years of development in this, it will feel fine. But like to me, it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't believe the return for my time investment here was 20 minutes of gameplay.
I know. I know. There's it definitely sort of for me, there's this toxic resentment that builds with every game I have. And this sort of is a nice sort of end to our conversation because it bookends the beginning, which is I guess maybe I don't feel so sacred about game dev because I bitterly resent every project when I'm done with it. You know?
Yeah,
So,
I think that's definitely normal. At least when you first release it. I know like everybody that I know personally, game developer wise, that has released a game, like you just like fall into this pit when and it's so
yep.
weird because the experience is so consistent and it's so like antithetical to what you would expect. Like you would expect like
I know.
I just released this game, like it's so exciting, I have this big thing out there I can be proud of, I get to start making money. But it's like it's just like it's not. It's like this giant thing of like I never want to touch a computer again. Like
I know,
like
dude. I know.
I never like when Cultic came out. I spent like a week or two doing like like critical bug fixing, and then I was just like I'm not touching this until January. Like
That's right.
I cannot stomach looking at the Unity logo right now. Oh
Yep.
man, and
Me and my
it's so consistent, which is the crazy thing.
Yeah, it is. It is, and I think it's like a cosmic joke.
Yeah,
It's like the universe is laughing at you because you do. I mean, every game dev treats their project like it's sacred, and every bit of you goes into it, especially indies. It's easier to be more corporate when you're part of the a bigger machine and a bigger team. But when it's a tiny team or it's solo, that game is you.
right.
It's a reflection of you. And so there's some, like my wife always says, Thomas, you don't know how to separate yourself from your game studio. Like you're one and the same. And it's a problem for me because you know, I wouldn't ever want to be best friends with or married to somebody who their identity was indistinguishable from their job. That's kind of annoying. It's like you're more than your job. But for games, for making games and doing it with a tiny team, it is almost impossible to separate yourself from it.
Well, I think
When your
I think
game,
it's different when it's an art form too. Like I mean,
Mhm.
it's different to be like if you're if you are doing something that's like less of a I'm trying to word this in a way that doesn't sound like crap. So, like my previous job before I switched to game dev full time, I did like software support, like support for a software company.
Mhm.
So customers calling me, breaking things, and me fixing them basically. And I liked that job. I was good at it. It was pretty easy. It paid well. But like it wasn't my identity. And I think that if your identity is like a complete loyalty and your personality is all about your job as a support person, that's different than being someone who's like an artist and like
Yeah.
this canvas that you've painted. Like your life is about these things that inspire you
Mhm.
and I'm not, again, I'm really not trying to say this as like not like don't take pride in your job or whatever, but I just think it's different when like to make it's I hope you know what I'm trying to say, and I'm not trying to be a
I
turd.
know what you're
I'm not
saying.
trying to
I'm
be a
not
turd about it.
No, I think you're overthinking it. I think it's quite literally as simple as pretty much every aspect of game dev is an art form.
which makes it
And art
personal.
art what distinguishes art from, let's say, some sort of technical skill is art requires you to be creative and honest and personal. There's something naked about it. And when you're constantly naked, that's the only word I can think of. When you're constantly naked and exposing every part of yourself emotionally into a project that's so personal, it's so terrifying. It's embarrassing. It's and it's public because the whole goal is to make money, and the way to make money is to get as many eyes as you can.
Right.
So it's just this big, huge, almost nightmare of exposing yourself to the whole world and everything that you've put into this thing, years of work and time and money. And what I've had to do is, as I've had more kids and as I've become more of a family guy, I had to learn how to separate myself from games, from making games. It's just not healthy for me. So when I go downstairs, I have to shed the game dev because my kids don't care. They don't want dad to be. They don't care that dad's a game dev. They don't. They don't care that dad does YouTube. They just want dad to play with them and be fully present. That's it. And so I've had to. It's so. Oh my goodness. It's like almost impossible though to separate the two. Um. So it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. But
Yeah. I would agree, but I don't know. There's a certain part of me that's like why wouldn't you want to? I don't know. Like I guess it's one thing to like to project your stresses on like on your family, but it's another thing to like just to be excited about the stuff you're working on and to want to talk about it and to want like I'm sure I talk my wife's ear off all the time about like this stupid little thing I just added into Bonerooms. I'm just like, oh,
well,
it's so cool though.
I mean, it really is based on a person's personality. My personality is I can't focus on two things at once. I can't. So if I'm thinking about game dev and I'm passionate about game dev, my kids get the crappy version of me. The one that's the words you're saying to my face are bouncing right off of my face and I can't even hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I have to literally flip a switch. Because I get super hyper focused on things. So it really does come down to your personality type. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'd love to hear.
And that's and I said that's probably one of the reasons that like my wife and I well, like we don't have kids. We have cats because we can emotionally neglect them for a night while we're focused on work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But we're both like very very because we both of our jobs are very passionate. Like I obviously do game dev stuff, and then she works very closely with like her family, and so that's all family business stuff is all very very personal and a big pride point for them. So it's like if we had more responsibilities in our lives outside of our jobs, we would be in trouble because our work life balance is a little skewed right now.
Sure. Sure.
And we're working on it to try. It was a nightmare, like 2022 when I was working 16-hour days on Cultic, and she was trying to split time between her full-time job and like doing stuff with family business stuff, and it was a nightmare. Like we hardly
Yep.
saw each other. Like our health took a nosedive, and so like we're trying to get away from that now, and that's
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm hoping that with chapter 2 out, I will finally be able to breathe a little bit.
I know.
But I just feel
I
like,
know.
and then granted, and it's not like 3D Realms isn't rushing me, my community isn't rushing me, but I feel like I'm way behind on it. Like my personal goal, I wanted this game to be out a month ago.
Yeah.
Originally I wanted chapter 2 to launch like a year after chapter 1, and then that obviously didn't happen, and then 2 years and that didn't happen, and and it just keeps getting bigger. But my solution with chapter 1 was to work more hours and just crunch and just get it done. And my solution now is like it'll be done when it's done. I want to work on it at a nice pace. I don't want to rush things. I don't want things to feel rushed.
Yep.
And so and the downside of that is now it's probably got a 2025 release date. Oh, it definitely has a 2025 release date. So
Yes. Well, you definitely don't want to. Please do not release during the holidays.
Yeah. That won't be happening.
It'll get smoked by the AA and AAA scene. But well, dude, that's a great place to wrap up. If anything, I think when we think about 2025, and for my audience listening, if you want to get into game dev in 2025, I just know for me, I want to be calm and creative and relaxed. And so for those of you listening who are scrambling constantly and worrying and anxious about your projects, try and learn to calm down and chill and not catastrophize everything in your brain. That's what I do. So I don't want to be that way anymore, and I just want to have a relaxing 2025. I think 2025, a lot of businesses, especially in the game industry, and I'm curious what you think about this, Jason. I feel like a lot of indie studios and publishers are stripping down back to the basics. They're simplifying what game development should be. It's not bloated. Not. I don't think it's going to be possible to be bloated in game dev in 2025 because the money's just not there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to be the trend or not, but it's kind of scary if it is because that shrinks the gap between like indie and AAA even more.
Yeah.
Because like I think like obviously the indie scene is very very full right now.
Well, I
Um,
don't know if
and
AAA is going to shrink down. I
well,
feel like
I'm
AAA,
just saying
they're,
like
they're
there's
going to do is they're going to focus on their big IPs,
yeah.
and you're just going to get a bunch of big IP launches. So less launches, but they're going to be big. So I don't know if that shrinks the gap. Or you could be right. I just don't feel like AAA is going to go down and start making indie games. I think they're
I
just
felt
going to
I
make
meant
less.
I guess I was saying more like the trend of all of the like studios, AAA studios that like
I see.
close or downsize, and the result is that people are making their own smaller studios,
Yes.
and then you create like this bigger bubble in like the double A sphere, but then like indie
Mhm.
has been kind of like heading towards double A in some cases. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
There used to be like this very big distinction between like Xbox Live Arcade games and then like what AAA is producing,
Absolutely.
and that gap gets smaller and smaller and smaller to where you have games that are considered indie but have these gigantic budgets and look phenomenal. And
Yeah.
so it'll be interesting to see what 2025 brings. That's for sure.
Well, I will tell you this, and I'll wrap up with this. I just launched a podcast with Thomas Sala. He's the creator. It's actually just went live while we were talking on my YouTube channel. And I'd recommend listening to it because his solution to that problem, to the congested, small game scene, is to build universes and build an audience that's dedicated to your universe. So, for example, the Cultic universe, you probably don't want to do this, but the idea is to keep building games based on the Cultic universe, the style, the art, the feel, but it's not a first-person shooter. Let's say in this case, it's a top-down strategy game, and you build on that universe, and the people who showed up for Cultic now show up for your next game and your next game and your next game. So you're basically creating a little island for yourself in this sea of like this massive congested sea of indie games. You're building an audience, and that audience loves your universe.
That's kind of
And
the plan.
I found that really interesting. I was like, that's a really smart idea, So anyway, that's what I'm gonna do.
No, that's kind of the plan. I mean, my next idea or the next game I want to work on my smaller kind of like procedural thing is I do plan to have it be a cultic game. So, but we'll see what happens.
I love that.
By the time chapter 2 is out, I might want nothing to do with anything that involves a firearm at that point. I'm just like, nope, we're making a farming game now.
I know. I know. My next game, I just want it to be like just a bunch of. I want a lot of movement in my next game. I can't. I won't say exactly what I want to make, but I want it to be fast and fun and flowy, uh, kind of like a vehicle game, top down and just beautiful and just cozy. Um, so different from what we're currently working on.
Yeah.
I just want to flee from like what I've spent my life working on for 2.5 years. So I
Yeah.
think that's natural though. But
Yeah.
anyway, all right. Everybody who's listening, there is a link in the description to check out Cultic, to check out Bonerooms. Anything else in the description you want, Jason?
I guess you throw my Twitter in there.
Yeah, yeah,
JSaw's games on Twitter. I am posting
sure.
on Blue Sky now as well. So I I don't have like a ton of traction there, but I love the vibe on Blue Sky. It
Yeah.
reminds me of like Tumblr. It's all very artsy and wholesome. So
Oh yeah.
I make the occasional bisque on Blue Sky. And so yeah, you can follow me there if you're not.
Isn't it? There's no AI art on Blue Sky. Or
They do. Blue Sky does take a much bigger stance against AI content. I have not seen it's that's the nice thing about it is like yes, I don't get the traction that I get on Twitter, but
Mhm.
my Blue Sky feed is just game dev and artists, and it's so nice.
Nice.
No, there's
Nice. I need to check it out.
no hate stuff, no political stuff, no
Yep.
bot spam, no AI stuff. It's so nice. So it's like even though Blue Sky is not giving me tons of growth or showing a big return, it's just I feel I like being a part of it.
Yeah.
It just feels good, and I hope it
I don't
continues
see.
to
I
pick
don't
up.
see why you don't enjoy seething political commentary all day.
Isn't that strange?
All right. Well, dude, thank you so much. That was a blast, and
Yeah, always great talking with you.
we're gonna obviously stay in touch as we move on into this wild frontier, man. We'll see what 2025 has for us.
We will.
All right. Cheers, bud.
See ya.
If you want to learn how to make games full time in 2025, if you want to be an indie game developer from your bedroom, I can teach you what I've done. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've secured deals with Armor Games, Serenity Forge, 3D Realms. I've done 2 Kickstarter campaigns, which basically raised $100,000 each. I know how to get funded with just a demo, and I'm going to teach you how to do it. For Black Friday, you're going to get 40% off full-time game dev, and you're also going to get 2D Art Pro and 3D Art Pro, which are my 2D and 3D art programs. They're going to be completely free. I rarely do a sale like this. This lasts for a short time, and there's only 50 seats available. So please check it out below if you dream of making indie games full-time in 2025. I have 4,000 students worldwide. I think you're going to love it. Take a look below. These seats will sell out. All right, cheers. I love you. Thanks for hanging out. Bye. Cheers.